Do you know somebody who's passive aggressive? Has anybody ever accused you of being passive aggressive? Hi, I'm Dr. Julie, a psychologist and relationship coach, and today I'm going to talk to you about what being passive aggressive is, how to recognize it, and give you a few tips on what to do about it. So let's start with what being passive aggressive is. And really, what it is a way to express being angry or resentful or bitter about something without actually saying it, without sounding like you're being angry, resentful, or bitter. Except the people who hear this or are the subject of this behavior kind of know something's wrong. They just sometimes can't quite put their finger on what's going on here. And even if they question the person who's being passive aggressive about it, the person can often fall back on what they said, or if say they were being sarcastic about something, they can be a little defensive about it and say, oh, well, you can't take a joke. And that brings me to the ways we can be passive aggressive and how to recognize what passive aggressive behavior is. And the first one I want to talk about is sarcasm. And sarcasm, it's actually a funny comedy humorous technique, but when it's used a lot, or when it's used and you can kind of hear a kernel of truth in there and it's personal, that's passive aggressive. And that's the reason I'm not a fan of sarcastic behaviors or comments in general, because when somebody is passive aggressive in a sarcastic way, they often sound like they're trying to make a joke, but you can hear the kernel of truth in there. You can hear the anger or the resentment or the bitterness, and it's masking something. It's communicating something while trying to skirt around the issue. And that's why we call it passive, because the person is trying to avoid confronting whatever is upsetting them. And it's aggressive because they're communicating their aggression in a way that other people can't deal with. So we give them this term passive aggressive. So sarcasm is a primary way people can be passive aggressive. Now, another really interesting way to be passive aggressive is through the silent treatment. And the silent treatment is really about taking back control and or punishing the other person because the person engaging in the silent treatment didn't like something that was said or done. So they quit talking. And there's no way to confront the issue if they won't talk about it. So once again, they're able to communicate their upset feelings. And it's very clear that they're upset, which is why they're not talking, but not allow other people a way to address the problem. Then there are backhanded compliments. These can be quite artful, like, oh, you look so nice today. I almost didn't recognize you. And you can hear how it starts out being a genuine compliment and ends up being a bit of a dig. And that's how backhanded compliments work. They sound like they're going to be nice, but once you get into them, they're kind of like a slap across the face. And the fourth way that we can express passive aggressive behavior, or ways in which we might encounter passive aggressive behavior, is procrastination. And this is when somebody says they'll do something and then they either don't do it, they do it in a half-hearted way, or they fail to do it, or fail to do it by the deadline. And that leaves other people or the other person kind of holding the bag. It leaves them with the problem. And it's really all about communicating that they're unhappy. They don't like the leader, they don't like the person who asked them to do something, or they don't like something about the system that they're in. And we'll often see this at work or in school when it's a group project and somebody doesn't participate, right? That's a form of being passive aggressive. And it may be a protest against the system, the leader, or the project itself. And they're doing it in a way so that they don't actually express their upsetness. They just don't do the project or their task in the project. Now, I find this to be a very important topic, especially if you're a people pleaser, because here's the deal. If you have strong emotions that you are afraid to express directly, it's quite possible they're leaking out as passive aggressive behavior. And people pleasers are particularly prone to avoiding confrontation, right? We don't want to get in that fight. We don't want to tell people how we're feeling or if we disagree, because that's kind of the opposite of being pleasing. And so we avoid the confrontation. Some of us avoid it at all costs, but those emotions need to come out somehow. We need to express them in some way. While I would advocate that we express our emotions in a direct, calm way, when you're a people pleaser, that can often be quite difficult because your need to avoid the confrontation often supersedes your ability to express yourself directly, calmly, and in a healthy manner when it comes to disagreeing with other people. And then those disagreements build up over time. They can turn into resentment. And next thing you know, you're making snide, sarcastic comments. You're giving backhanded compliments. You're doing half hearted work. Or maybe you're even giving people the silent treatment. And whichever way this is coming out for you, it's really not healthy for you or for the other people. It's keeping you from the quality relationships that you would really like to be having. So ultimately, what we need to learn to do is to express how we're feeling in a healthy way. Now, of course, I'm not going to advocate if you're angry that you yell. I am going to advocate that if you're upset about something, you find a way to talk about it. And what I've done to help people with this problem is I've put together a tip sheet called Saying It Right, Your Guide to Confident Communication. It's free and you can get it by clicking on the link in the description. Now, if you're noticing that you engage in passive aggressive behavior and you'd like to change that, I suggest a three-step process. One is you want to recognize your pattern. When is it that you get upset and then slide into passive aggressive behavior? So notice the situations, circumstances, people that tend to pull that out of you. Then you want to work on how to communicate in an open and clear manner how you're feeling, your disagreement, or what you're upset about. And that Saying It Right, Your Guide to Confident Communication tip sheet is a great place to start. Thirdly, what you want to do is after you've given it a try, you've tried to say how you're feeling, and you might have felt like it didn't go very well because the first time we try things, we often don't really feel like we know what we're doing. What you want to do is pause and reflect on how that came out, how that went for you, what went well, maybe what you could do differently. And through this process of reflection, try something, get feedback, try it again, and iterate, you'll get better at it. And I really encourage you to do this. I've got a little saying I like to pass along to people, and that is anything worth doing is worth doing awkwardly at first. Basically, if you give it a shot, it's going to feel unnatural, but if you keep trying, it's going to start to feel more natural. And then you're going to be able to do it better and better, and it'll start to feel like this is part of how you do your life, right? Now, what do you do if you encounter other people being passive aggressive? Because the problem here is that they're obviously unhappy about something, but they've expressed themselves in a way that makes it really difficult for you to address the problem. And even if you try to address the problem, the nature of the passive aggressive behavior often thwarts that attempt. If they are being sarcastic and you question them about it, they'll just say you can't take a joke. And or if they're pulling off the silent treatment, then you can't even get a word in because they won't listen to you. If it's a backhanded compliment, they can say, "Oh my God, I didn't mean it that way." And if it's procrastination, they can give lots of excuses around why they didn't get the job done or why they did a half-hearted attempt at it. And once again, they're skirting the problem and not being willing to address it. So here's what I would suggest you do. I would suggest employing some assertive communication and you say, look, I see this is happening. I can tell you're upset about it. Be very clear with them what your take on it is. And I would like to talk to you about it. You would want to do that in a setting that's emotionally safe for them. So I would suggest a one-on-one setting. So if the passive aggressive behavior occurs in a group, pull them aside. And if it's just between the two of you, just get very direct about what your take on their comment was and do they want to talk about it. Ask them some open-ended questions, see if you can get them to talk about it. And if you can, great, because hopefully you can address the problem. And if not, you've kind of put them on notice that you're paying attention. And hopefully in the future they can say something or express themselves in a healthier way. Ultimately, our goal is to create healthy, functional, positive relationships. And so if you notice yourself or somebody else engaging in passive aggressive behavior, you do want to address it. And that will deepen the relationships that you have with the people that you're engaged with. If you've got any questions about passive aggressive behavior, be sure and drop them in the comments and maybe we can answer them. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm sure you know somebody who has been victim of passive aggressive behavior or maybe even somebody who engages in passive aggressive behavior. So share the video with them. Maybe they'll learn something about how to deal with it. And finally, hit the notification button so you'll get notified when I put out other videos like this one. Take care and have an amazing week.